The sun rose over Fort Benning, painting the dusty training grounds in shades of gold and rust. The air was thick with heat, sweat, and the sharp tang of gunpowder. Among the new recruits, Lieutenant Emily Carter walked with a measured, unassuming confidence. To anyone glancing quickly, she seemed almost fragile, a small-town girl from rural Kentucky who had grown up hunting deer and squirrels in the misty Appalachian mornings. Her blonde hair was tied back in a tight bun, her green eyes scanning the range with quiet intensity. As she approached the armory, her hands brushed the metal lockers instinctively, as if greeting old friends. She walked up to the line of rifles, her voice firm, almost startlingly so, when she asked, "I'd like the M40, the sniper model." The laughter was immediate. Heads turned. Soldiers who had spent years in military academies, hardened by drills and endless physical strain, erupted in amusement. The rifle? One man sneered, barely containing his grin. "You mean the toy gun, Lieutenant?" Another choked on his laughter, leaning against the wall. Whispers spread like wildfire. "She wants a sniper rifle." "For real?" Emily's lips pressed into a straight line. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't react. She had heard this before, back home, when she was one of the few girls hunting with her father. When neighbors laughed at her ambition, when men told her she couldn't handle the weight of a gun, let alone the responsibility of a shot. Her eyes scanned the room, noting the subtle postures of her peers, the way they leaned back, confident that their laughter had stung. But she ignored them. She didn't need their approval. She had her father's training, years of precision practice, and a discipline that was unmatched in any range in the country. The instructor stepped forward, shaking his head with a bemused smile. "You sure about this, Lieutenant? Sniper rifles aren't casual toys. They require skill, patience, and nerves of steel." "I'm aware," Emily said simply, her tone calm and unshakable. Her gaze held his for a moment, unwavering. "I'll demonstrate." The room erupted in quiet muttering. Some of the soldiers rolled their eyes. Some smirked. A few, though, glanced at her with the faintest flicker of curiosity. Hours later, she stood at the firing line, her M40 assembled and cradled in practiced hands. Her heart beat steadily, not with fear, but with anticipation. She adjusted her scope, breathing in a rhythm she had learned from years of hunting in dawn fog with her father. Each inhale was slow, deliberate. Each exhale measured. Her fingers rested lightly on the trigger. The first round left the barrel with a whisper. The bullet traced a perfect arc, hitting the center of the steel target 1,000 meters away. The clang echoed across the range, bouncing off walls of sand and concrete, silencing the room. There were murmurs. Eyes widened. The laughter from earlier faded into an uneasy silence. No one had expected her to succeed. No one had expected her to be that precise on her first try with the rifle. Emily didn't smile. She simply adjusted her stance and fired again. And again. Each shot was steady, deliberate, almost surgical in its execution. By the time she had finished, her target had more than a dozen perfect hits. From the control tower, someone watched silently. General Marcus Ellison, a veteran with decades of service etched into his lined face, observed the young lieutenant with sharp eyes. He didn't approach yet. He didn't make a sound. But he recognized the steadiness in her hands, the calm precision in her breathing, the unwavering focus in her eyes. She moved like someone who had been trained, not just in technique, but in instinct, someone who had inherited a skill that ran in her blood. After she finished, Emily walked back to the line, replacing her rifle with careful respect. The men who had mocked her earlier now avoided her gaze. Some muttered excuses under their breath. Others simply stared, unable to reconcile the small-town girl they had laughed at with the marksman who had just dominated the range. The general's assistant handed him a folded piece of paper, an old personnel file, dusted and worn. Ellison unfolded it with deliberate care. A name at the top caught his eye: John Carter. The signature on the bottom, barely legible, made him pause. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. And then he saw it, the mark. A faded tattoo, partially hidden in the photograph, but unmistakable. A black talon clutching a bullet. Ellison exhaled slowly, a shadow of recognition crossing his face. The black talon. He had seen that mark decades ago, in battles that were never recorded, and missions that would remain classified forever. And now, here it was again, on the wrist of this young lieutenant. Emily returned to her barracks, wiping sweat from her brow. She could feel the weight of the eyes that had watched her, the grudging respect that had formed quietly among the men. She didn't seek approval, yet she understood its presence. Later, as night settled over the base, and the hum of insects filled the warm Georgia air, Emily sat on the edge of her bunk. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, calm and measured. Precision isn't strength, Emily. It's patience. It's control. It's knowing that the shot is more than just hitting a target. It's understanding the moment, the wind, the world around you. She traced the faint outline of her own tattoo on her wrist, a black talon clutching a bullet, inked in a long-forgotten style. It was more than a symbol. It was a legacy, a promise. She was the last of something ancient, something unspoken, something the world had almost forgotten. Outside, the barracks were quiet, but in the shadows, someone was still watching. General Ellison adjusted his cap and muttered under his breath, "She's the real thing. She's her father's daughter. Black Talon lives again." And for the first time, Emily allowed herself a faint smile. She hadn't come to prove anyone wrong. She had come to prove herself. The air of Fort Benning felt different that night, heavy with expectation, with quiet tension. A storm was forming, not of weather, but of talent, of history, of something unstoppable. And Emily Carter was at its center. The sun had barely crested the horizon over Fort Benning when Emily Carter laced up her boots, the worn leather creaking faintly in rhythm with her heartbeat. The barracks were stirring, but she moved with quiet purpose, her rifle slung casually over her shoulder. Every step reminded her of the woods of Kentucky, the mornings when fog clung to pine needles and dew soaked her boots. Her father had taught her more than just how to shoot. He had taught her how to see the world in angles, distances, and subtle shifts in wind. "Patience," he had said, voice low and steady. "The shot comes when it needs to. Not before. Not after." Emily had learned it young. She remembered the way he would set up tin cans on fence posts, or how he'd line up branches to create a natural target. "It's not the rifle," he said once, squinting through the scope as her little hands trembled with excitement. "It's the mind behind it. Control the mind. Control the shot." She shook the memories away as she entered the training yard. Her peers were already assembled, the early light reflecting off polished rifles and sweat-slicked uniforms. Whispers followed her, some skeptical, some curious. The memory of yesterday's range performance had traveled fast. Even so, she knew there were doubters. They didn't yet know that her skill wasn't new, that it was inherited, honed over decades of quiet discipline. Her assigned task that morning was a long-range exercise, far more demanding than the usual routine. The target had been placed at 1,500 meters, the far edge of the standard field test. The wind whipped across the range unpredictably, gusts rattling the metallic barricades. Most of the soldiers were murmuring complaints, adjusting their grips nervously. Emily, by contrast, exhaled slowly, letting the wind speak to her. She knelt on the sand, felt the cold steel of the rifle against her shoulder, and adjusted her scope. Her mind went silent, save for the memory of her father's instructions. She accounted for the wind, the angle, a slight tremor in her pulse, and then gently squeezed the trigger. The bullet left a faint echo and struck the steel target almost dead center. A murmur ran through the crowd, disbelief mingled with awe. Another soldier attempted the same shot, but the wind betrayed him. Emily adjusted again, firing another round. Perfect. Then another. Each shot was a whisper of inevitability. At the edge of the range, someone was watching with a quiet intensity that made her spine prick. General Marcus Ellison, shadowed by early morning light, observed through a pair of binoculars. His eyes narrowed when he noticed the faint tattoo on her wrist, a black talon clutching a bullet. A mark he hadn't seen in decades, a symbol from missions erased from history, missions that had never been spoken aloud. Emily's performance that morning was flawless. Her fellow soldiers could only stare. The laughter of yesterday had vanished, replaced by cautious curiosity. Yet she didn't seek approval. Skill, she knew, was not for applause. It was for results. Later that day, she was summoned to the general's office. The building was quiet, the walls lined with decades of photographs and medals that bore witness to the weight of service. Ellison's gaze was steady, almost piercing. "Lieutenant Carter," he began, voice measured, "I've been watching your training. You move differently than most. Your aim, it's not just talent. There's something else here." Emily nodded, uncertain how much she should reveal. "I learned from my father. He taught me to see before I shoot, to feel before I move." Ellison's eyes softened slightly. "Your father?" His voice trailed. Memories flickered in his expression, of smoke-filled battlefields, missions in forgotten corners of the globe, and a young, untested soldier who bore the same mark. He leaned forward, almost conspiratorial. "The mark you carry, the black Talon, it isn't common knowledge. It's rare, very rare." Emily traced the faint ink with her finger. "He said it meant never miss. He said it was something you earned, even if no one knew." Ellison nodded slowly. The Black Talon lineage was a legend among legends, a group of snipers whose names had been erased from all official records. They had completed missions deemed impossible, had neutralized threats without leaving a trace, and had vanished into history when the operations became too politically sensitive to acknowledge. He had served alongside some of them decades ago, watched them perform with precision that bordered on supernatural, and now, decades later, he saw that mark again, on the wrist of a young lieutenant barely out of training. "Your father," Ellison whispered, almost to himself. "He was one of us. He should have trained you in secret, but I see now he didn't have to. You've already inherited everything." Emily's heart thumped, a strange mixture of pride and unease. She had always known she was skilled, but never had she understood the weight of her heritage. Her father had given her lessons in hunting, in survival, in patience, but he had left her unaware of the legacy she carried. The general continued, now in a lower tone, as if speaking aloud could make the truth real. There were rules, rituals. Only the best of the best carried the Black Talon. They were shadows, unseen, unacknowledged, unstoppable. "You?" He paused, weighing his words. "You are the next." Emily felt the weight settle in her chest. The responsibility was immense, but it also ignited something in her. It was as if all the early mornings in Kentucky, the frost-bitten fingers on rifles, the countless hours spent learning to breathe and wait, had been leading to this. Her reflection in the polished glass of the office window was that of a soldier, calm, composed, ready. But underneath, something deeper stirred. The lineage of Black Talon was not just about marksmanship. It was about instinct, patience, the ability to remain calm when everything else demanded panic. It was about being unseen and unforgettable simultaneously. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Emily moved through drills, her body responding with precision, her mind calculating angles and trajectories almost instinctively. Her peers watched, some with skepticism, some with awe, but none could deny the quiet dominance she exhibited. That night, Emily sat alone on her bunk, her rifle carefully cleaned and stored beside her. The barracks were quiet, save for the low hum of distant machinery and the occasional shuffle of boots on the concrete floors. She traced her wrist tattoo again, feeling the indelible ink beneath her fingertips. The Black Talon, a legacy reborn. Outside, the warm Georgia night wrapped around the base. Somewhere in the shadows, someone else watched, unseen but ever present. General Ellison, sitting in his office, reviewed classified files once more. The name John Carter resurfaced repeatedly, memories of long-vanished operations flooding back. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "So it begins again," he muttered softly. "The Black Talon lives once more." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her father's teachings and the promise of what was to come. She wasn't here to prove herself to the men who had mocked her. She was here to honor a legacy, to take up a mantle she had been born for, and to face a future that would demand more than just skill. It would demand courage, patience, and an unwavering will. And somewhere deep inside, she felt it, the first whisper of destiny. The early morning sun had barely touched the horizon when Emily Carter stood at attention in the general's office. The room smelled of polished wood, leather, and the faint tang of old gunpowder. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching the medals and photos lining the walls. General Marcus Ellison sat behind the heavy oak desk, eyes locked onto her with a gaze that seemed to measure every heartbeat, every micro-movement, every thought she hadn't yet spoken. "Lieutenant Carter," he said slowly, voice calm but edged with curiosity. "I've reviewed your performance over the past several days. Your accuracy is remarkable, beyond standard expectations. But there's something unusual about you. Something I can't quite explain." Emily tilted her head slightly, keeping her expression neutral. "Sir?" Ellison leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled in front of him. He studied her closely, tracing the faint tattoo on her wrist, a black talon clutching a bullet. His chest tightened. He hadn't seen that symbol in decades, not since John Carter, the last living Black Talon operative, had vanished into obscurity. "Your father?" Ellison began, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "He served with me. I knew him well, and now, seeing you, I recognized the mark." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had always known her father was skilled, but she had no idea of the breadth of his history. No clue that he had been part of a secretive, elite unit erased from all records. "Sir?" she prompted gently. "The Black Talon," Ellison said, letting the words hang in the air, was never official. It was never meant to exist on paper. The finest snipers we had, men and women who operated without acknowledgement, completing missions that no one could talk about. The mark you carry, it means something. A lot. Emily traced the faint lines of her tattoo with her finger, her voice quiet. He said it meant never miss. He said it was a promise, to protect, to survive, and to strike when necessary. Ellison nodded slowly, a shadow crossing his face. "Your father was one of the last. When he left the program, the Black Talon effectively ended. But now, seeing you, I realize it never truly died. It lived on in you." Emily swallowed, processing the weight of his words. She had inherited skill, yes, but now she understood it carried responsibility, an almost mythical burden. The missions, the secrecy, the unrecorded operations, all rested on the shoulders of those few chosen to bear the mark. "You've been performing exceptionally in public drills," Ellison continued, voice serious now. But you are capable of far more. I've arranged a special evaluation for you. It's off the books. Few have ever completed it successfully. Emily's eyes widened slightly, but her voice remained steady. Sir, what kind of evaluation? Ellison gave her a long, measured look. It's designed to test your endurance, skill, and judgment under extreme conditions. Physical, mental, tactical. It will push you beyond what you think you're capable of. You may not survive unscathed, and there will be no one officially tracking your progress. It's not for show. It's real. A shiver ran through Emily, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. I understand, sir. I'll be ready. The general's expression softened for a moment, almost imperceptibly. Your father had faith in you. So do I, but I need to be sure that the Black Talon legacy continues in capable hands. Over the next few days, Emily prepared quietly. The barracks buzzed with normal training, but she moved like someone carrying a secret weight. Her routines became sharper, faster, more disciplined. Every aspect of marksmanship was reviewed, every movement rehearsed. Sleep came in fits, punctuated by dreams of distant battlefields, of shadows she didn't yet recognize, of her father's steady voice guiding her hand. Finally, the day arrived. She reported to a secure hangar on the outskirts of the base, where a convoy of unmarked vehicles awaited. The general was not present. His presence would have defeated the purpose of the evaluation. Instead, she was met by two operatives, silent, professional, eyes sharp with intensity. One handed her a folded map. The other secured a small backpack containing rations, a water supply, and a compact sniper kit. This is your starting point, one of the operatives said, voice low. Your objective is in the desert beyond. You will navigate, observe, and neutralize targets as instructed. No support team. No extraction plan unless you deem it necessary. Success depends entirely on your judgment. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders. She knew instinctively that this was not a test of ego or rank. It was a test of survival, strategy, and precision. Her father had trained her for moments like this, though she hadn't known the full extent of his preparation. Hours later, she found herself at the edge of the Nevada desert. The sun scorched the sand, creating waves of heat that distorted the landscape. She moved quietly, her boots sinking slightly in the loose earth, rifle ready, eyes scanning the horizon. The wind was unpredictable, gusting from multiple directions, carrying dust and scent in irregular patterns. Every step required calculation. Every breath was measured. Emily set up her first observation post atop a low ridge. From there, she could see the distant target range, metal silhouettes positioned irregularly, some moving, some static. Her task was to identify and neutralize threats while remaining undetected. One misstep would reveal her position. One misjudgment could cost her the evaluation. Or worse, hours passed. The sun climbed high, beating down relentlessly. Sweat trickled beneath her helmet. Her mouth was dry, throat tight. She crouched behind a rock, calculating trajectories, wind vectors, distances. When she finally took her first shot, it was a quiet whisper of movement. The target fell, precise, efficient, lethal. She exhaled slowly, the tension in her body easing slightly. Another target appeared, moving unpredictably. She adjusted quickly, accounted for the wind, the distance, and the slope of the terrain. Another perfect shot. Each success bolstered her confidence, yet she remained cautious. Confidence could breed complacency, and complacency could be fatal. As night fell, she set up a temporary bivouac. The desert became cold and unforgiving, the wind whipping through the sand. Alone, she felt the weight of isolation, the same solitude that the original Black Talon operatives had endured on countless missions. Her thoughts drifted to her father. She imagined his voice, steady and firm, guiding her hand, whispering lessons in patience, breath control, and perception. Somewhere in the shadows, unseen but ever watchful, Ellison's network monitored her progress. The general did not intervene, did not give instructions, but he observed, remembering the countless missions he had overseen decades ago. He had trained soldiers, yes, but none had ever possessed the innate instinct that Emily displayed. She was not merely skilled, she was preternaturally precise, a living extension of the Black Talon legacy. As the first night of the evaluation wore on, Emily remained vigilant. Every rustle, every shadow, every sound was noted, analyzed, and catalogued. She slept only in short bursts, alternating between rest and observation, her rifle always within reach. When dawn arrived, she continued the exercise, moving methodically through the desert, completing objectives with calm efficiency. By the end of the second day, Emily had demonstrated more skill than most operatives achieved in weeks. She remained unseen, undetected, and lethally precise. She had neutralized every designated target and completed every assigned task without error. Yet the evaluation was not over. She knew the real test of endurance, judgment, and instinct was still to come. Back at Fort Benning, Ellison reviewed the transmitted data, a rare smile flickering across his face. The young lieutenant had exceeded expectations in every measurable metric: speed, accuracy, stealth, decision-making. But more importantly, she had displayed the intangible quality that defined the Black Talon: patience under pressure, instinctive judgment, and the ability to operate alone while remaining entirely effective. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing, whispering to himself, "She's more than I imagined. She is her father's daughter." And then some. Emily's footsteps echoed softly across the empty desert floor. She adjusted her rifle, scanning the horizon, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. This was only the beginning. Her father's legacy, the Black Talon lineage, was no longer a secret buried in history. It had returned, embodied in her calm precision, her patient mind, and the quiet, unyielding resolve that had carried her through the evaluation. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the pulse of destiny, a rhythm older than herself, inherited and unbroken. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly beneath the noon sun, a harsh expanse of shifting sand and jagged rock. Lieutenant Emily Carter adjusted her scope, the heat rising off the dunes in shimmering waves that distorted distance and perception. Her skin was already slick with sweat, clothes clinging uncomfortably, yet she remained perfectly still, crouched behind a low ridge. Every movement mattered. One misstep, one careless gesture, could betray her position. She had been alone for hours now, tracking her objectives and calculating trajectories with precise attention, her senses stretched taut like a drawn bow. The first day of her evaluation had been only a prelude. The general's assessment was not just about hitting a target, it was about endurance, mental fortitude, and the ability to survive under extreme conditions. Emily understood this. Every long-range sniper she had ever read about, every story her father had whispered to her in the woods of Kentucky, emphasized patience as much as accuracy. And she had patience in abundance. The sun rose higher, baking the desert into a furnace. Sweat stung her eyes, and dust clung to every exposed surface, but Emily remained steady, scanning for movement. Her first target appeared, a steel silhouette, barely visible at 2,000 meters. She exhaled slowly, calculated the wind's direction and speed, accounted for the slight unevenness of the terrain, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet left her rifle with a faint hiss, striking the target dead center. The metallic clang echoed across the empty canyon, a sound both triumphant and terrifying in its starkness. For hours, she moved systematically across the terrain, finding vantage points, tracking multiple targets, and remaining unseen. Each successful shot required patience and calm observation. But more than that, it required instinct, the kind of instinct that could only come from years of disciplined practice, sharpened by inherited skill. Emily had grown up learning to read subtle shifts in the environment, the way a branch bent under weight, the slightest ripple of dust, the faintest flicker of movement in the distance. All of these instincts now guided her in deadly precision. By mid-afternoon, the challenges became more complex. The targets were no longer static. Simulated threats moved unpredictably across the canyon floor, changing distance and direction constantly. Emily adjusted her breathing, her posture, and her aim, calculating the trajectory in real time. The wind shifted unpredictably, and the desert heat created mirages that could confuse even the most experienced marksman. Yet she adapted seamlessly, instinct blending with calculation. Each shot was a silent declaration of skill. But the evaluation was not only about marksmanship. The operatives monitoring her from a hidden observation point introduced additional variables. Simulated ambushes tested her ability to remain undetected, navigate treacherous terrain, and respond under pressure. At one point, a series of smoke grenades erupted across the ridge, obscuring her line of sight. She crouched low, waited for the gusts of wind to settle the smoke, and fired 3 perfectly timed shots, each hitting a target as the smoke dispersed. Her calm under duress impressed even the unseen observers. As night fell, the desert transformed. Temperatures plummeted, and the heat of the day was replaced by a biting cold that seeped into her bones. Emily adjusted her bivouac, using her gear to insulate herself against the chill. Sleep was fleeting. She rested only in short intervals, keeping one eye on the horizon. She knew the evaluation was designed to push her limits, physical, mental, and emotional. Every decision she made, every movement, was a test of endurance. She had been trained to survive in the woods of Kentucky, yes, but this desert was a different challenge entirely, and she welcomed it. The following morning, Emily continued the assessment. The targets were now at extreme distances, some beyond 2,500 meters, a level at which even minor miscalculations could prove disastrous. She moved to a higher ridge, her boots sinking slightly into loose sand. From this vantage point, she had a panoramic view of the canyon floor. She focused, adjusted her scope, and fired. The bullets struck true, each impact precise, confirming what the general's network had already begun to suspect. Emily Carter was exceptional, a living extension of the Black Talon legacy. Hours passed in this relentless cycle of observation, movement, and precision shooting. The desert tested every part of her body and mind. Her arms ached from holding her rifle steady for long periods. Her throat was parched. Every gust of wind threatened to shift her aim. Yet Emily remained disciplined, the lessons of her father and her years of training guiding her through fatigue, heat, and isolation. At one point, a simulated threat approached a critical target location. Emily had no clear shot. The wind howled across the canyon, and the distance was extreme. She recalculated, waited for the moment when the enemy silhouette paused, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, striking with perfect accuracy. Her heart remained calm. Her mind was unshaken. The Black Talon instincts, dormant for decades, lived in her every movement. By the evening of the second day, Emily had successfully completed all assigned tasks. Yet the evaluation was far from over. The general's operatives had designed additional challenges, unpredictable and merciless, to push her beyond mere skill. A sudden simulated ambush forced her to move quickly, without exposing herself. She scaled a steep ridge, slid into cover behind a boulder, and fired on multiple targets while remaining unseen. Her movements were fluid, instinctive, lethal, the kind of performance reserved for elite operatives whose names were never officially recorded. Exhaustion gnawed at her body, but she welcomed it. Pain and fatigue were markers of endurance, evidence that she had survived where many would fail. She had already surpassed what was expected of ordinary soldiers. What remained was the final test, a single critical shot, at a distance so extreme that few believed it could be achieved without extraordinary skill and calculation. Emily moved to her final vantage point, the last ridge overlooking the canyon. The wind shifted unpredictably, the sun hanging low on the horizon, casting long shadows. She adjusted her scope, breathing slowly, counting her pulse in sync with the rhythm she had learned over years of disciplined practice. Every factor mattered: wind, distance, angle, temperature, humidity, and even the faint shimmer of heat rising from the sand below. The target appeared, a solitary steel silhouette positioned precisely at 3,000 meters. Emily steadied herself, visualizing the trajectory, imagining the bullet traveling through the air in a perfect arc, striking the mark as her father had taught her to envision. She exhaled, gently squeezed the trigger, and fired. The bullet struck true, splitting the target at its center. The sound was a distant echo, but in Emily's mind, it rang like a bell of triumph and inevitability. She had completed the final challenge flawlessly, under extreme conditions, and without error. Her skill was undeniable. Back at the observation point, General Ellison reviewed the transmitted data, leaning forward in his chair, eyes gleaming. Every shot, every movement, every calculation had been perfect. Emily had not only passed the evaluation, she had exceeded expectations in every measurable category, demonstrating endurance, precision, and judgment beyond what he had seen in decades of training elite operatives. He spoke quietly into a secure communicator. "She's ready. The Black Talon lives again." Exhausted but composed, Emily sat atop the ridge, scanning the desert below. Her body ached, her throat was parched, and her mind was weary from constant calculation, but there was a deep satisfaction in her chest. She had survived the most grueling test she had ever faced, proven her instincts, and confirmed her inherited legacy. She was no longer just a trainee or a soldier. She was the next in a lineage of elite snipers, whose skill and precision were unmatched. As the sun set over the Nevada desert, Emily traced her wrist tattoo once more, the black talon clutching a bullet. It was a symbol of more than accuracy. It was a legacy, a promise, and a reminder that she was part of something far greater than herself. She had endured, excelled, and survived. The Black Talon, thought lost to history, had returned. And deep within her, a spark ignited, anticipation for the challenges ahead, for the missions yet to come, and for the silent responsibility that she now carried with unwavering resolve. She rose, packed her gear, and began her return journey, the desert stretching endlessly before her, a proving ground that had transformed her from skilled trainee into a living embodiment of the Black Talon. Emily Carter had left the Nevada desert behind, but the lessons it had taught her burned in her mind. The endless sun, the punishing wind, the scorching sand, every challenge had sharpened her senses, honed her instincts, and solidified the Black Talon legacy within her. Yet nothing could have fully prepared her for what awaited next. Operation Phantom Veil, a covert program, shrouded in secrecy. Its existence known only to a handful of generals, operatives, and the woman now bearing the weight of the Talon. She arrived at an unmarked facility late at night, the perimeter dark, except for the occasional flicker of a security lamp. No insignia marked the entrance. No one spoke of the program openly. Emily was met by two operatives dressed in black tactical gear, their faces shadowed beneath helmets and goggles. Their presence conveyed an unspoken warning. In Phantom Veil, mistakes were fatal. "This is your new assignment," one operative said, handing her a slim black tablet displaying coordinates and encrypted instructions. Your mission is time-sensitive. Details are limited for a reason. You are expected to navigate, identify, and neutralize without support or extraction. You will not be recorded in any log. If discovered, the operation is denied. Your actions are your responsibility alone. Emily nodded, her expression calm, controlled. She had faced isolation in the desert, survived extreme conditions, and proven her skill under impossible circumstances. She knew instinctively that Phantom Veil was more than a test. It was a proving ground for the Black Talon, a measure of her ability to act decisively in real-world scenarios without guidance or oversight. Hours later, she was aboard a nondescript aircraft, the engines rumbling softly beneath her. The coordinates pointed to a remote region on the border, where intelligence had confirmed a rogue arms exchange involving sophisticated weapons. The operatives briefed her quickly. The targets were well armed, moving unpredictably through mountainous terrain. Extraction was uncertain. Any engagement could trigger national and international consequences. Emily adjusted her gear methodically, checking every strap, every magazine, every piece of equipment. The desert had taught her to anticipate variables: heat, wind, fatigue, stress, and she applied the same meticulous care now. Her heart beat steadily. She had no fear, only focus. Only the instinctive calm that had carried her through countless drills and trials. The aircraft touched down on a concealed airstrip. Emily disembarked silently, the moonlight casting shadows across the rough terrain. She moved with careful efficiency, slipping through the darkness like a phantom, observing the compound below. Spotlights crisscrossed the perimeter. Guards patrolled with rigorous discipline, and vehicles moved in calculated patterns. To any ordinary operative, the challenge would have seemed insurmountable. To Emily, it was an opportunity to test her skill against real threats. She found a high vantage point, overlooking the compound, and deployed her scope. Every movement, every observation was deliberate. She noted guard rotations, vehicle routes, and potential entry points. Time passed slowly, each minute a study in patience. She memorized patterns, calculated distances, and adjusted for wind and terrain. The desert had taught her to survive alone. Phantom Veil tested her to strike effectively while unseen. Hours later, the targets began to converge on the exchange point. Emily took careful aim, steadying herself against the edge of the ridge. She exhaled, then squeezed the trigger. The bullet struck one of the targets precisely at the designated location. The operative fell without raising an alarm. She adjusted quickly for the next target, factoring in distance, movement, and environmental conditions. Another shot, another successful hit. Her calm efficiency contrasted starkly with the chaos below. The compound remained oblivious to her presence. Phantom Veil was designed to test operatives under extreme conditions, but Emily had exceeded all expectations. Each shot, each movement, each decision demonstrated the lethal instinct of the Black Talon. She was not just skilled, she was a force to be reckoned with, silent, invisible, unstoppable. By midnight, she had neutralized 6 key threats and secured the intelligence critical to the mission. Yet the operation was far from over. Extraction had been compromised. A rogue team had discovered her presence, and now pursuit was imminent. Emily moved quickly, using shadows, terrain, and calculated timing to remain undetected. She scaled rocky outcrops, slid across dry riverbeds, and navigated treacherous terrain with a precision honed from years of disciplined practice. Fatigue gnawed at her, but she relied on instinct and training. Every sound, every rustle of brush, every shift in wind was processed in real time. Her rifle was an extension of her body, her movements fluid, deliberate, and silent. She had become one with the environment, a ghost moving through moonlit terrain, untouchable, and unseen. Hours later, Emily reached a secondary observation post, her body exhausted but her mind alert. She had survived an ambush, adapted to rapidly changing conditions, and completed all objectives without detection. Her breathing was steady, her posture calm. She was alone, yet entirely self-reliant, the embodiment of the Black Talon lineage. From a distance, the general observed her progress through encrypted surveillance. His lips curved into a faint smile, admiration mixed with respect. He had seen many operatives come and go, but few displayed the combination of skill, instinct, and composure that Emily possessed. She had proven herself under the most extreme conditions, and he knew the full measure of her potential had yet to be tested. The final hours of the mission required her to secure critical intelligence from a mobile target. Emily tracked the vehicle from a concealed ridge, adjusting for distance, wind, and terrain. The target moved unpredictably, weaving through mountainous roads. She calculated the trajectory carefully, each movement precise. Then, in a single fluid motion, she fired. The bullet struck its mark flawlessly, disabling the vehicle without alerting nearby forces. Mission objectives were complete. Emily exfiltrated under the cover of darkness, moving silently to the extraction point. She was picked up by an unmarked vehicle and transported to a safe location, her presence entirely unrecorded in official records. She had acted alone, executed flawlessly, and proven herself as the living embodiment of the Black Talon. Hours later, back at the undisclosed facility, she debriefed with the operatives. No praise was given, no celebration awaited. In Phantom Vale, success was silent, recognition optional. Yet she felt the satisfaction deep in her chest, a quiet affirmation that her skill, her patience, and her inherited instincts had carried her through the most demanding operation she had ever faced. "Lieutenant Carter," one operative said, voice low, "you've exceeded expectations. Not many complete Phantom Vale missions alone. Fewer still without detection. You've performed exceptionally." Emily simply nodded, her expression calm. Words were unnecessary. She had completed what others could not, demonstrating precision, patience, and instinct under pressure. She had not only survived, but thrived. Later, alone in her quarters, Emily traced the Black Talon tattoo on her wrist. The mark was more than ink. It was a symbol of heritage, skill, and responsibility. She had become a ghost operative, a shadow in the night, the next in a lineage of unparalleled marksmen. Her father's legacy had not only lived on, it had evolved through her. In the darkness, she felt a strange sense of calm. Phantom Vale had tested her in ways nothing else could, yet it had also affirmed her place in history. She was no longer just a soldier or a trainee. She was the Black Talon reborn, ready to face any challenge, any mission, any threat, unseen, unstoppable, and unrecorded. General Ellison, observing from a secure location, allowed himself a rare expression of pride. "She's more than her father's daughter," he muttered softly. "She's the Black Talon herself." Emily's eyes closed briefly, the hum of the night settling around her. She had survived, adapted, and mastered. She had embraced her heritage, proven her skill, and solidified her place in a lineage few would ever know existed. The Black Talon had returned to the world, silent, precise, and lethal, and now it was her turn to shape its future. The safe house was quiet, almost unnervingly so. Emily Carter unpacked her gear with meticulous care, arranging every item as she always did: rifle, ammunition, tactical tools, and the small black tablet that contained her next set of instructions. The events of Operation Phantom Vale still pulsed in her mind: the extreme heat, the unforgiving terrain, the flawless execution of her first live, unrecorded mission. Each image was sharp, almost visceral. And yet, the real challenge was only beginning. General Marcus Ellison arrived shortly after midnight, entering the safe house without fanfare. His presence was calm, commanding, the kind that instantly commanded attention even without a word. He sat across from her at the small metal table, eyes thoughtful, as though weighing the invisible history she had now inherited. "Lieutenant Carter," he began, voice quiet but steady, "you have completed Phantom Veil, and you have done so exceptionally. But the Talon is more than skill alone. You've inherited a legacy, one your father upheld, one you are now expected to continue." Emily listened intently, tracing her wrist tattoo with her fingers. The black talon clutching a bullet had always been a symbol of focus, precision, and patience. Now, she realized, it represented far more: responsibility, secrecy, and the shadowed weight of history. Ellison leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Your father's missions were classified at the highest levels. They involved high-value targets, international operations, and decisions that affected national security in ways most could never comprehend. What he left for you wasn't just training. It was knowledge, instinct, and judgment passed down from one generation to the next." Emily's heart thumped. She had always admired her father's skill, but she had never imagined the breadth of his influence, the depth of the secrecy that had defined his career. She had inherited a name and a mark, but now she understood the shadow of history that came with it. "Sir," she said quietly, "I understand the responsibility. I want to do right by it." Ellison nodded. "Good, because the next phase of your training will not only test your skill, but your judgment, your morality, and your ability to act decisively under pressure. You will face situations where hesitation could cost lives, where rules may be unclear, and where only instinct and precision can save the day." He handed her a folder, its contents encrypted and classified beyond standard military clearance. Emily opened it carefully. The folder contained dossiers of her father's past operations, detailed field notes, and mission logs long buried in secure archives. Each entry revealed the extraordinary scope of his work: clandestine negotiations, high-value extractions, and precision operations that had saved countless lives, all without leaving a single trace. As she studied the documents, Emily felt a strange mixture of awe and unease. She realized the enormity of what her father had carried silently. He had been a shadow operative, moving through conflicts unnoticed, shaping outcomes without recognition. And now, that mantle had passed to her. Ellison spoke again, voice low and measured. "Your father trusted you to continue the Black Talon legacy, but he left more than skill. He left insight, judgment, and the moral compass that guides a shadow operative. You must learn not only to strike with precision, but to decide when to strike and when to wait. That decision is yours alone." Emily closed the folder, absorbing the weight of the responsibility. The desert had tested her physical endurance. Phantom Veil had tested her operational skill. Now, she would face the mental and emotional challenges that came with being a true Black Talon operative. The next day, she began the preparatory phase for her covert missions. The exercises were psychological, ethical, and tactical. Ellison guided her through simulated scenarios designed to push her judgment to its limits. Decisions were presented in real time. Targets with ambiguous intelligence, civilians nearby, unexpected threats, and rapidly changing environments. Each choice carried consequences. Each decision required careful calculation, moral clarity, and strategic insight. Emily moved through these exercises with the calm determination that had defined her since Fort Benning. Her father's teachings, combined with her own instincts, allowed her to navigate complex scenarios without hesitation. She learned to assess threats instantly, weigh risks, and act decisively, understanding that hesitation or uncertainty could be catastrophic. As the week progressed, she delved deeper into her father's legacy. She studied past operations in detail, learning the methods, reasoning, and strategies behind each mission. She realized that her father had been meticulous, not only in marksmanship, but in planning, anticipating contingencies, and maintaining composure under impossible pressure. The Black Talon was not just a sniper. It was a strategist, an operative who moved unseen yet impactful, silent yet lethal. Ellison observed her progress carefully. You've inherited his skill, but now you must inherit his judgment. The Black Talon is not only precision, it is wisdom, discretion, and an unflinching moral center. That is what will set you apart from ordinary soldiers. Emily nodded, understanding that her training was moving from physical mastery to mental and emotional mastery. She was learning not just to operate alone, but to think and act like an operative who could influence outcomes silently, decisively, and responsibly. The culmination of this phase came unexpectedly. A simulated high-value extraction mission was placed before her, one designed to test all aspects of her inherited skill: observation, precision, endurance, judgment, and moral clarity. The objective was to extract a key informant from hostile territory without causing collateral damage, under conditions that mimicked real-world chaos. Emily approached the task methodically, studying the terrain, observing movement, and calculating angles with meticulous precision. The simulation placed her in a position where every decision mattered. Civilians mingled unknowingly with hostile elements. Targets moved unpredictably. Extraction paths shifted with the environment. She adjusted her plan in real time, relying on instincts honed from years of observation and skills inherited from her father's training. Her calm precision allowed her to strike only when necessary, neutralize threats silently, and maneuver the informant safely through dangerous territory. Every choice was critical, and every decision reflected the philosophy of the Black Talon: patience, calculation, and discretion. By the end of the simulation, she had successfully completed the extraction, demonstrating not only physical and tactical skill, but moral clarity and judgment under pressure. Ellison observed silently, a rare look of satisfaction crossing his face. "You've not only inherited the Black Talon," he said softly, "you've become it. Your father would be proud." Emily felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Black Talon was more than skill or heritage. It was a living, breathing legacy that required constant vigilance, dedication, and moral clarity. She was now its bearer, its living embodiment, ready to face missions that would challenge not only her precision, but her judgment and her humanity. In the following weeks, Emily continued her training, moving seamlessly between high-intensity exercises, covert simulations, and deep study of her father's operational history. Each day reinforced her skills, sharpened her instincts, and prepared her for the challenges of real-world operations. She became not only a master marksman, but a strategist, a shadow operative capable of influencing outcomes from the unseen edges of conflict. Her body bore the marks of her preparation: lean muscles from endurance training, calloused hands from countless hours handling rifles, and a steady, unwavering posture that radiated confidence. Her mind was sharp, her instincts precise, her judgment refined. She had become more than a soldier. She had become a legacy. Late at night, she often sat alone in the safe house, tracing the Black Talon tattoo on her wrist. It had started as a symbol of her father's skill, but now it represented something greater: responsibility, heritage, and the promise of the Black Talon's return. She had embraced the shadowed mantle, and she understood that every decision she would make in the future would carry the weight of history and consequence. General Ellison observed her progress from a secure location, noting her growth with quiet admiration. She had not only survived extreme tests of skill and endurance, but had internalized the philosophy of the Black Talon. He allowed himself a rare smile. "She's ready," he whispered. "The world doesn't know it yet, but the Black Talon has returned. Emily's eyes closed briefly, feeling the weight of the legacy she now carried. Phantom Veil had tested her skill. The desert had tested her endurance. Now she had inherited judgment, strategy, and the moral clarity of the Black Talon. She was ready for whatever missions awaited, invisible, unstoppable, and precise. The shadow of her father's legacy was now hers to wield, and she would carry it with unwavering resolve. And deep within her, a spark of determination ignited. The Black Talon was no longer a legend confined to history. It was alive in her, quiet, precise, and lethal, ready to shape the future from the shadows. The city sprawled beneath Emily Carter like a living organism, streets weaving together in a chaotic tangle, neon lights flickering against the slick asphalt from last night's rain. She moved silently through the shadows, her black tactical gear blending seamlessly with the darkness. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. Her heartbeat pulsed steadily, an internal metronome guiding her movements. The mission was clear: infiltrate, observe, neutralize, extract, unseen, undetected, untouchable. This was her first fully classified operation abroad. A mission that carried the weight of national security and the legacy of the Black Talon. Ellison had briefed her only in fragments. Knowing too much detail would compromise both her instincts and her autonomy. The target was high value, heavily guarded, and dangerous. A warlord's lieutenant who trafficked illegal arms, posing a threat to countless lives. Intelligence suggested the man would meet associates at a rooftop terrace in the heart of the city tonight. Every variable was unpredictable. Any misstep could trigger disaster. Emily adjusted her sniper rifle, ensuring her scope was aligned, her distance calculated, and her trajectory corrected for the slight drizzle falling from the night sky. Rain distorted sound and visibility, creating a cloak that would aid her concealment, but also challenge her precision. She found a vantage point in a building across the street, a narrow ledge overlooking the terrace. From here, she had a clear shot, but patience was paramount. She waited, breathing slowly, allowing her instincts to synchronize with the environment. Minutes passed. She scanned the streets below. Civilians mingled with the target's bodyguards, unaware of the danger shadowing them above. The Black Talon's creed rang in her mind: precision, discretion, patience. She could strike, but she had to wait for the perfect moment. One wrong move, and the mission would fail. Her target appeared, flanked by two guards. Emily's scope traced the line of movement, calculating distance, wind, rain, even the slight sway of a lamppost in the breeze. She exhaled slowly, letting her pulse steady, and aligned the crosshairs. A single shot, and the warlord's lieutenant dropped silently, the sound masked by the rain and city noise. Her body remained motionless, heart steady, eyes scanning for any immediate threat. It was done. But there was no time to celebrate. Reinforcements arrived, moving faster than anticipated. Emily adjusted quickly, neutralizing the first wave with surgical precision. Each shot counted. Each breath was measured. Civilians nearby remained unaware, protected by her skill and judgment. She was a shadow, invisible and lethal, the Black Talon in action. A third guard appeared, rifle raised, scanning rooftops. Emily ducked low, rolling silently to the side, her movements fluid, instinctive. She calculated distance, trajectory, and timing, firing a single shot that disarmed the guard without causing harm. Her training, her father's teachings, and Phantom Veil experience converged seamlessly in this moment. She was alive in the shadowed legacy of the Black Talon, executing precision under pressure where hesitation could be fatal. The mission escalated. Vehicles arrived at street level, additional armed men emerging from black SUVs. Emily's mind raced, yet remained calm, moving through contingencies she had anticipated, but now executed under real-world pressure. She adjusted her vantage, changing positions silently across rooftops, ensuring she remained unseen while maintaining a perfect line of sight. Every movement was deliberate, every shot calculated. Hours passed, the rain falling harder, streets slick and treacherous. She eliminated threats selectively, prioritizing neutralization without unnecessary risk. Civilians were protected, collateral damage minimized. It was an orchestration of lethal efficiency, a demonstration of instinct, skill, and moral judgment, the very essence of the Black Talon legacy. At one point, the warlord's lieutenant attempted to flee through a narrow alleyway. Emily had a clear shot but waited, calculating the consequences. The alley led to a crowded market. One wrong shot would endanger lives. She followed, waiting for a moment when the target was isolated. Then, with absolute precision, she fired, striking the target in a non-lethal manner that incapacitated him. Mission success required not just elimination, but judgment, and Emily had delivered. The final phase of the mission involved extraction. The target carried intelligence critical to global security. Emily moved swiftly, shadowing the target and his incapacitated guards to a safe extraction point designated by Ellison. Her path was unpredictable, designed to confuse potential pursuers. She remained hidden in plain sight, a ghost moving through a world oblivious to her presence. As she approached the rendezvous, a sniper across the street noticed movement. Someone had anticipated her tactics. Emily froze, scanning the building. The unknown sniper had positioned perfectly, weapon trained on her location. Her instincts kicked in. She calculated distance, trajectory, wind, even the angle of the rain. With a subtle adjustment, she fired a single, precise shot that disarmed the sniper without injury, maintaining stealth and control. The threat neutralized, she continued to the extraction point. Finally, she reached the safe location. The target was secured, the intelligence intact, and no lives were lost. Emily's body ached from hours of tension, crouching, moving, and shooting, yet her mind remained sharp. She exhaled, allowing herself a moment to absorb the enormity of what had just been accomplished. She had faced lethal threats, navigated unpredictable variables, and executed a mission that demanded more than skill. It demanded judgment, patience, and moral clarity. Back at the undisclosed safe house, she debriefed with Ellison via secure communication. "Mission complete?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded. All objectives met. No casualties among civilians. Target secured. Intelligence intact. Ellison's tone held the faintest trace of satisfaction. "You've performed exceptionally, Emily. This operation was the ultimate test: skill, judgment, patience, and moral clarity under real conditions. Few could have executed it successfully. Few could have maintained discretion and precision under this level of pressure. You've proven yourself." Emily allowed herself a small moment of pride, but kept her expression neutral. In the Black Talon, success was quiet, recognition optional. The mission had been dangerous, complex, and morally challenging. She had excelled, yet she knew that each operation would demand even greater skill, sharper instincts, and unshakable judgment. Later that night, she sat alone in the safe house, tracing the Black Talon tattoo on her wrist. The mark, once a symbol of inherited skill, now carried the weight of operational experience. She understood the lineage she had joined, the legacy of the Talon, and the immense responsibility she now bore. Every mission she undertook would test her to the limit, physically, mentally, and morally. Her phone buzzed with a secure message. Ellison had sent coordinates for a debriefing and a new mission briefing, more complex, more dangerous, and with higher stakes than anything she had faced. Emily smiled faintly, the spark of determination igniting in her chest. She had survived, adapted, and thrived. She had proven herself as the Black Talon reborn, a ghost operative capable of shaping outcomes from the shadows. She stood, checking her rifle and gear one last time. The city outside was unaware of the storm that had passed across its rooftops, unaware of the operative who had moved through darkness, unseen yet decisive. Emily had executed her mission with lethal precision, protecting the innocent while neutralizing threats, proving beyond doubt that the Black Talon legacy was alive and thriving. Ellison's final message lingered in her mind. The world doesn't know it yet, but the Black Talon has returned. Emily traced her tattoo again, feeling its weight, its promise, its responsibility. She was more than her father's daughter. She was the living embodiment of a legacy, the shadow in the night, the precision in the chaos. She had faced her first fully classified mission abroad and had emerged unscathed, undetected, and triumphant. The mission was complete, but Emily knew this was only the beginning. The world was full of threats, unseen dangers, and missions that would test every facet of her skill, judgment, and humanity. She was ready, invisible, unstoppable, and precise. The Black Talon was no longer a story whispered in shadows. It was alive in her, prepared to shape the future with silence, skill, and deadly accuracy. As the city slept, oblivious to the events that had just transpired, Emily Carter stood by the window, her gaze distant, her mind focused. She had become more than a soldier. She had become the Black Talon, and somewhere far above the chaos, General Ellison allowed himself a rare smile. He had seen many operatives, many talents, and many promising soldiers, but none had ever carried the precision, instinct, and legacy that Emily possessed. The Black Talon had returned, and the world would never see her coming. Emily Carter stood on the rooftop of a high-rise in an unfamiliar city, the cold night wind biting through her tactical gear. Below, the streets were alive with activity, lights reflecting off rain-slicked asphalt. Yet she was alone in the darkness, a ghost among millions, her presence invisible, her mission critical. This was the ultimate test, a mission that would solidify her place as the living embodiment of the Black Talon legacy. General Ellison's message had been brief: objective high value, extraction critical, collateral minimal, operate alone. Success defines the Talon. No details were given beyond that. No support, no backup. Every decision was hers alone. The weight of responsibility settled over her shoulders, heavy but familiar. She had trained, endured, and executed countless operations, but this mission promised unparalleled complexity. Emily reviewed her scope and checked her rifle. She scanned the streets below, calculating distances, angles, and potential escape routes. A convoy was moving toward a secured facility. The target was inside, heavily protected by armed guards and advanced security systems. Intelligence indicated the individual possessed knowledge that could destabilize multiple covert operations, worldwide if not secured. The stakes were unprecedented, the consequences unforgiving. Her first step was observation. Emily crouched behind a ledge, her eyes narrowing as she traced every movement. Guards shifted positions, cameras scanned the surroundings, and streetlights flickered, casting long shadows. Each detail mattered. Her father had trained her to see patterns invisible to the untrained eye, to anticipate behavior, to act decisively while remaining unseen. Every lesson from Phantom Vale, every challenge in the Nevada desert, every calculated decision during her previous classified missions culminated in this moment. Hours passed. Emily's patience became almost physical, a weight pressing against her ribs. She tracked the target and his entourage with meticulous care, noting routines, timing rotations, and memorizing every potential threat. Her heart remained steady. The Talon required not only precision, but perfect judgment, and she had perfected both. Finally, The convoy arrived at a secluded section of the facility. Emily moved silently, scaling the rooftop of an adjacent building to gain a vantage point directly above the target. She adjusted for distance, wind, and environmental conditions, her fingers brushing the scope with the familiarity of muscle memory. One clean, deliberate shot would neutralize the threat while preserving the surrounding civilians. She waited and waited. The Talon was patient. Instinct guided her as much as calculation. The moment came, a split-second opening where the target moved into the line of fire, unshielded by guards or vehicles. Emily exhaled slowly, steadying herself, and squeezed the trigger. The shot struck with flawless precision, incapacitating the target without causing collateral damage. But the operation was far from over. The facility was on high alert, and reinforcements poured into the area. Emily adjusted, moving with fluid efficiency across rooftops, shadows her ally, darkness her cloak. Each shot she took was calculated, lethal, and silent, neutralizing threats while keeping the civilians safe. Her movements were seamless, instinct and training fused into a deadly ballet. At one point, a guard advanced with a firearm trained on her approximate position. Emily recalculated instantly, factoring distance, trajectory, and environmental variables. A single shot disarmed the guard without injury, maintaining stealth and control. The Talon's creed, patience, precision, discretion, guided every action. She was untouchable, unstoppable, unseen. Hours stretched into the early morning. Emily navigated the facility, securing critical intelligence and neutralizing threats with surgical precision. Her body ached, her muscles screamed, but her mind remained razor-sharp. The Talon demanded endurance, and she had endured. She had survived isolation, extreme conditions, hostile engagements, and moral dilemmas. Now, she faced the culmination of her legacy, mastery of both skill and judgment. The final challenge was extraction. The intelligence she had secured required rapid exfiltration, but the surrounding area was saturated with armed personnel. Emily evaluated the terrain, her pulse steady, her mind focused. She moved silently, a shadow among shadows, guiding herself and the secured target through a series of concealed alleys, service corridors, and abandoned structures. Every step required calculation, every breath a measured decision. Suddenly, a sniper from an unknown location engaged. Bullets struck near her position, sending shards of concrete spraying across the alleyway. Emily dropped low, tracing the angle of fire. Her instincts guided her. She moved with lethal precision, identifying the sniper's location, and fired a single, clean shot that neutralized the threat without alerting additional enemies. Her training, her father's legacy, and her experience merged into flawless execution. Finally, she reached the extraction point, where an unmarked vehicle awaited. She secured the intelligence, loaded the target safely, and entered the vehicle. The journey back was silent, every movement calculated. Emily reflected on the mission, flawless execution under the highest stakes, complete discretion, no collateral damage. She had not only completed the operation, but embodied the Black Talon legacy in every sense. Back at the safe house, she debriefed with General Ellison via secure line. "Mission complete?" he asked. Emily nodded, voice steady. "Objectives met. Target neutralized without civilian harm. Intelligence secured. Extraction successful." Ellison paused, allowing the gravity of her achievement to sink in. "You have not only performed as expected, you have surpassed it. This mission was unprecedented in complexity and danger. Few could have completed it alone. Fewer still with such precision and judgment. You are the Black Talon reborn." Emily felt the weight of the words, but did not allow pride to alter her calm demeanor. She traced the Black Talon tattoo on her wrist, the mark of her father's legacy. It symbolized more than skill. It represented patience, judgment, endurance, and responsibility. She had inherited not just a name or a mark. She had inherited history, duty, and the silent burden of those who operated in shadows. As dawn broke over the city, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The Nevada desert had tested her endurance. Phantom Vale had tested her skill. Her father's operational history had tested her judgment. And now, this ultimate mission had tested her ability to integrate all aspects of the Black Talon into a single, cohesive force. She had succeeded. She had become what her father had once been, a ghost, a master operative, invisible yet decisive, precise yet discreet. Ellison's voice echoed one final time through the secure channel. Remember, Emily, the Talon is more than a mission or a skill. It is a responsibility, a promise to act when others cannot, to protect when others fail. Carry it wisely. Carry it silently. Carry it with honor. Emily nodded, understanding fully. The world outside remained unaware of the events that had transpired, oblivious to the invisible hand that had secured stability, protected innocence, and neutralized a critical threat. The Black Talon existed in shadows, acting decisively, unseen, and unstoppable. She stood at the window, watching the city awaken, rain droplets glinting in the early sunlight. She felt a deep, unshakable sense of purpose. The Black Talon was no longer a legend whispered in secrecy. It was alive, embodied in her, prepared to act whenever precision, judgment, and discretion were demanded. She had proven herself, against nature, against chaos, and against enemies both known and unseen. And somewhere, far away, General Ellison allowed himself a rare, proud smile. He had seen many talented operatives, but none had carried the precision, instinct, and moral clarity that Emily possessed. The Talon had returned, silent, lethal, and precise. Emily traced the tattoo once more, feeling its weight, its promise, its responsibility. She had become more than her father's daughter. She was the Black Talon reborn. And as the city bustled below, oblivious to the shadow that had moved above it, Emily Carter knew one thing with unwavering certainty. The world would never see her coming. But the consequences of her absence or presence would be felt with deadly precision. She had embraced the legacy, mastered the skill, and inherited the responsibility. She was the Black Talon, unseen, unstoppable, and lethal, ready to shape the future from the shadows. The story of her father, the legend of the Black Talon, had not ended. It had evolved, lived on, and now carried forward in her hands, her mind, and her unmatched skill. The night faded, and with it, a new era began, the era of the Black Talon reborn.